It started with a package. No, not a letter, not a phone call, not some big dramatic moment. Just a package. A small, unassuming box sitting on the doorstep when I came home from work one Tuesday evening. I'm not usually the type to make a big deal out of things, but this package, it felt different somehow. I didn't recognize the sender. It was just my address, no return label. I remember staring at it for what felt like an eternity, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe it was something Lily had ordered online, or maybe a gift from one of her friends. But there was something about the way it was sitting there that made me uneasy. It was almost like it was waiting for me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to open a door I wasn't ready to walk through. I'm Sam, and I've always been a guy who avoids confrontation. I'm not proud of it, but it's just how I've always been. It's easier to ignore the problem than to face it. But this felt different. I brought the box inside, set it on the kitchen counter, and stared at it for a moment longer. It didn't make sense. Who would send me a package like this, with no name or explanation? I glanced over at Lily, who was sitting on the couch, her eyes glued to her phone. I didn't ask her about it, didn't even mention it. Instead, I just opened it. Inside was a small, leather-bound journal. Nothing else. No note, no letter, just the journal. I turned it over in my hands, feeling the worn edges of the cover, the weight of it. I had no idea what to make of it. It wasn't the kind of thing either of us would buy. It wasn't her style. But there it was, in front of me. I opened the journal. The first page was blank. The second page, however, wasn't. There, written in neat, precise handwriting, was a single sentence. I know what you did. I froze. My heart pounded in my chest, and for a second, the room felt like it was closing in around me. I felt like I was suffocating. I know what you did. What did that even mean? I turned the page, half expecting the next line to explain everything. But it didn't. The next page was blank again. And the next. And the next. But that one line, the one that had been written with such certainty, hung in the air like a terrible promise. I closed the journal and set it down on the counter. My hands were shaking, and my mind was racing. Who would send me something like this? I thought about Lily. Could she have done this? Maybe it was a joke, some kind of twisted prank. But then again, it didn't feel like a joke. It felt personal. And then it hit me, the realization I had been avoiding. I had been ignoring things for months now. Little things that didn't add up. Small moments where I had seen Lily acting strange, too secretive, too distant. I hadn't confronted her. I hadn't asked the questions I should have asked. But now, here I was, holding a journal with a single sentence that felt like a bomb had just gone off in my chest. I glanced over at Lily, who was still absorbed in her phone. She didn't look up when I moved toward her, didn't even notice as I slid the journal in front of her. She barely reacted, just casually swiped on her screen as if it were any other day. I wanted to scream at her, to demand answers, but something stopped me. Something held me back. Maybe it was the fear of what I might find out. Maybe it was the realization that deep down, I already knew the truth. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at her, trying to find the courage to speak. But I didn't. Instead, I turned and walked away. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, tossing and turning, replaying everything that had happened over the past few months. The late nights, the strange phone calls, the way Lily had started acting distant. And now, this journal. I know what you did. What did I do? And who was watching me? I couldn't stop thinking about it. I knew I had to ask her. I knew I had to confront her, but I was scared. Scared of the truth. Scared of what might happen if I asked the wrong questions. But I couldn't ignore it anymore. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I made coffee, sat down at the table, and waited. But everything felt off. The air in the room was thick with tension. Lily barely spoke. She didn't ask about the journal. She didn't even seem to notice the silence between us. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I put down my coffee and turned to her. Lily, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I need to ask you something. She didn't look at me. She just kept stirring her coffee, like she was avoiding my gaze. I found something, I continued. A package. And inside, there was a journal. And in that journal, there was a message. Her hand stopped moving. The spoon clinked against the side of the cup. She slowly looked up at me, and for the first time in weeks, I saw something I couldn't place, flicker in her eyes. What was the message? She asked, her voice cold, almost too controlled. I took a deep breath and said the words I had been avoiding for so long. I know what you did. The moment I said those words, I felt a shift in the room. It wasn't a violent one, but it was unmistakable. The temperature seemed to drop a few degrees, and Lily's expression hardened, her eyes narrowing ever so slightly. For a second, I thought she was going to deny it. But she didn't. Instead, she just stared at me, her fingers frozen around the coffee cup. I couldn't read her face. There was nothing there, no guilt, no surprise, not even anger. It was like I had just asked her what time it was, and she was waiting for me to ask something more interesting. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Her lips moved as though she was searching for the right words, but they didn't seem to exist. I pressed her. "What is this, Lily? Why didn't you tell me about the package? Why didn't you tell me about the journal?" She glanced down at the table for a moment, and I caught her fingers twitching slightly. Was she hiding something? Was I finally getting to her? "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice low, but her eyes avoiding mine. "There's nothing to discuss." I could feel the lie hanging in the air, the weight of it. It wasn't the first time she'd lied to me, but this felt different. This felt like it was more than just a casual excuse. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I knew I couldn't back down now. "Lily, please. I'm not stupid. I know something's going on. You've been acting distant, and now there's a journal with a message written in it. I know what you did. What does that mean?" She was silent for a long time. Her eyes were fixed on the cup in front of her, as if it held the answers. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer, but it was still the same coldness that had crept into everything between us. "You're overthinking it, Sam," she said. "I told you it's nothing." "Nothing," I shot back, the frustration bubbling over. "Then why did someone send it to me? Why did they write that message? I can't just let this go, Lily. I need to know what's going on." Her eyes flicked to mine for just a second, then quickly away. "I don't want to talk about this anymore. You're making it into something it's not." There it was. The dismissal. The avoidance. It was like a switch had been flipped, and the woman I thought I knew, the woman I thought I trusted, was suddenly gone. I was left staring at the person sitting across from me. Someone who wouldn't look me in the eye. Someone who seemed desperate to hide whatever it was she was keeping from me. I felt a surge of anger, but I pushed it down. This wasn't about yelling or throwing accusations. It was about getting to the truth. "Lily," I said quietly, "please, just tell me the truth." She shifted in her seat, but she didn't speak. Her silence was louder than anything she could have said. It was the silence of someone who was hiding something, and that alone told me everything I needed to know. I stood up, unable to sit still any longer. "Fine. If you won't talk to me, I'll figure it out on my own." I grabbed the journal from the table, my heart racing in my chest. I wasn't sure what I expected, but I knew I had to find answers. Before I could leave the room, she finally spoke. "Don't go through my things, Sam," she said softly, but there was a sharp edge to her voice. "If you do, we're done." I froze. Her words cut through me like a blade. My mind screamed at me to ignore her, to press on, but something about her tone made me hesitate. Was I really ready to destroy everything? To lose her for good? But in that moment, something clicked inside me. I had already lost her. She wasn't the woman I thought she was anymore. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the man I used to be, either. I walked out of the room without saying another word. I didn't expect to find anything that night. I really didn't. I thought maybe I'd go through the journal, look for a clue, and see if my suspicions were just paranoia. Maybe I'd find nothing at all, and we'd go back to pretending everything was fine. But when I opened the journal again, I realized I was already too deep into this. The first few pages were nothing but blank. But on the 6th page, something different caught my eye. It wasn't a sentence this time. It was a name. Max. Just a name, written in a hurried, slanted script, as if someone had jotted it down without thinking. I stared at it for a long time. Max. I had no idea who that was. My heart beat faster. Was this someone from her work? A friend? I had no clue. But I felt something inside me, something cold and heavy, start to shift. I turned the page. The next entry was short, but it stopped me dead in my tracks. "We need to meet tonight. 9 p.m. It can't wait anymore." I felt my breath catch. That was it. That was the confirmation. Whoever Max was, it was clear now. There was something going on. The pieces I had been too afraid to put together were finally starting to fall into place. I should have stopped there. I should have put the journal down, walked away, and given her space to explain. But I didn't. My hands were shaking, my mind racing, and I flipped another page. The next entry made my stomach drop. I know you're married, but I can't keep pretending I don't want this. I felt like the room was closing in around me. The air became thick, suffocating. I could barely process the words. It felt unreal, like I was reading some kind of bad dream. Who was this Max? What had they done? And why didn't I see it coming? The rest of the pages were a blur. More messages, more lines that hinted at something deeper, something more than I was prepared to face. My mind was spinning, each line confirming what I had been afraid of for months, but didn't want to admit. I had been living with a stranger, and I hadn't even realized it. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to confront her then and there, to ask her about Max and demand an explanation. But another part of me, one that was more cautious, knew that if I did, I'd be stepping into a storm I wasn't sure I could survive. I closed the journal, my hands still trembling. I stared at it for a moment, as if hoping it would offer some kind of answer. But there were no answers in that book. Just more questions. I sat there in the silence, the weight of the truth pressing down on me, wondering how I had gotten here. I had spent so many months ignoring the signs, convincing myself everything was fine. But now, there was no turning back. I had to find out the truth. The next day, everything felt off. The air in the house was thick with tension, even though Lily tried to act normal. She made coffee as usual, went about her routine, but I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. I kept looking at her, wondering if she knew that I knew, but she never met my gaze for long. There was an unease in her eyes, a flicker of something that made my stomach twist. I couldn't stop thinking about the journal, about Max. It was like the words had carved themselves into my brain, each one echoing in my thoughts, getting louder with every passing minute. I decided to do something I'd never done before. I was going to follow her. That evening, after dinner, Lily said she had to go to the office to finish some work. It was late already, but she seemed in a rush, almost eager to leave. She was acting strange, more distracted than usual. I told myself it was just her usual late-night work routine, but the words from the journal kept circling in my mind. "Are you sure you don't want me to come with you?" I asked casually, as if nothing was wrong. She hesitated for a moment, then smiled, a little too quickly. "No, it's fine. I'll be home soon. Just a few things to wrap up." I watched her grab her bag and leave the house, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what I was hoping to find, but I couldn't just sit there anymore. Not with that journal, not with Max hanging in the air like some unfinished sentence. I followed her. I kept my distance, staying far enough behind that she wouldn't notice me. My mind raced, replaying everything I had read in the journal. "We need to meet tonight. 9 p.m. It can't wait anymore." It was almost 8:30 now. I had no idea where she was going, but I had to know. She turned into a parking lot near a cafe I'd never seen her visit before. It was quiet, tucked away behind a row of trees. She parked the car and, for a moment, just sat there, staring straight ahead. My pulse quickened as I waited, unsure of what to do next. And then, just as I was about to make my move, a man approached the car. He was tall, with dark hair, and dressed in a dark jacket. He was smiling as he reached for the door, and Lily immediately got out to meet him. My heart stopped. They hugged. A long, tight hug, one that lingered a little too long. And then they kissed. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I had been hit in the chest with a sledgehammer. The image of them together was burned into my mind, like a scar that wouldn't fade. I wanted to shout, to run over there and demand answers, but I couldn't move. I was frozen. She pulled away, looking up at him with a smile that I hadn't seen in years. The kind of smile I used to get, back when things were different. I watched as they walked into the cafe together, the doors swinging shut behind them. I stayed there, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I didn't know how long I sat there, the world spinning around me. I had just witnessed something I couldn't unsee. I couldn't deny it anymore. The truth was staring me right in the face, and I was too late to do anything about it. I don't know how long I sat there in the car, just staring at the dark cafe, but eventually, I knew I had to go home. I had to face her, but I didn't know how. How do you confront the person you've loved, the person you thought you knew, when everything you thought was real is suddenly a lie? I didn't know, but I had to try. I couldn't wait any longer. I had to go home and face her. But my mind was a mess. Every scenario played out in my head, each one darker than the last. What would I say? What could I say? I had seen them kiss. I had seen it with my own eyes. There was no denying it now. I drove home slowly, every turn feeling like I was moving in slow motion. I didn't want to face her, but I knew I couldn't avoid it anymore. Not after what I'd just witnessed. When I got home, Lily's car was already in the driveway, the front door ajar as if she'd been waiting for me. I stepped inside and immediately saw her sitting on the couch, her eyes fixed on the TV, but her mind clearly somewhere else. "Sam," she said quietly, barely glancing at me. "You're back early." I didn't respond right away. My eyes went straight to her, searching for any hint of guilt, any sign that she knew I knew. But there was nothing. Just the same calm face I had seen for months now. The same mask. I sat down across from her, my hands shaking slightly. I didn't know how to start, but the words finally came out. "I saw you tonight, Lily," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but I could feel the anger and hurt rising in my chest. "I saw you with him." Her eyes flickered for a second, just long enough for me to catch it. Then she looked away, her face unreadable. "I don't know what you're talking about," she replied, but the coldness in her voice was different. It wasn't defensive, it was almost dismissive. I clenched my fists, trying not to let my frustration boil over. "Don't lie to me, Lily. I saw you with him. I saw you kiss him." Her gaze met mine finally, but there was no apology, no regret. Just that same emptiness I had come to recognize. "You're overreacting, Sam," she said flatly. "It's not what you think." The words hit me like a slap. "Not what I think." "Really?" I took a deep breath. "I saw you. You didn't even try to hide it. How long has this been going on?" She stood up suddenly, pacing in the living room, her back to me. "It doesn't matter. It's over now, Sam. You don't need to know any of this." "Over?" My voice cracked. "You've been seeing him behind my back, and you think it's just over like that?" Lily stopped pacing and turned to face me. Her expression softened, but it was the kind of soft that makes your heart hurt even more. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said, almost like she was apologizing, but her eyes were still cold. "But I've been unhappy for a long time, Sam. You just didn't notice." I couldn't breathe. The words hit me harder than I expected. "You've been unhappy? And you couldn't tell me? You couldn't even give me a chance to fix things?" She shook her head. "You were always too wrapped up in your own world, Sam. Too distracted. You didn't care anymore. Not the way I needed you to." That was it. My heart shattered in that moment. The woman I had spent years with, the woman I thought I knew, had just reduced everything to a few cold words. There was no emotion, no apology, just a statement of fact. I felt a surge of anger, but more than that, I felt a deep sadness. Sadness for the life I thought we had, sadness for the trust one had given her, and now, the truth crashing down on me. "Is it him, Lily?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Is it Max?" She didn't answer at first, but the look on her face said enough. I didn't need her to confirm it. "Why?" I managed to ask, choking on the words. "Why didn't you just tell me? Why did you have to lie to my face every day?" "Because I didn't want to hurt you," she said again. But this time, there was something in her voice that sounded almost like regret. But it was too late for that now. I stood up, too angry and hurt to stay there any longer. I turned to leave, but as I reached the door, I heard her voice again, quieter this time. "Sam, please, don't go like this. We can talk about it." But there was nothing to talk about. She had already made her choice. I walked out without looking back. I couldn't stay in that house anymore. The walls felt suffocating, like they were closing in on me with every breath I took. I didn't know where I was going, but I had to leave. I grabbed my jacket, shoved my keys into my pocket, and walked out the door without a second thought. The cool night air hit me as soon as I stepped outside, but it didn't do anything to calm the storm in my chest. I drove aimlessly, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight that my knuckles turned white. I didn't know what to do with myself. Part of me wanted to scream, to rage against everything that had happened, but the other part just wanted to disappear. I parked the car by the lake, where I had gone a million times before when I needed to think. But tonight, I couldn't think. My mind was a mess of anger, betrayal, and confusion. How had I not seen it? How had I not seen the signs? I sat there for what felt like hours, just staring at the water. The moon reflected on its surface, but it was cold, distant, just like everything I felt now. Everything I thought I knew was a lie. I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to face her again. But what other choice did I have? I reached for my phone, and the first thing I saw was a message from Lily. My thumb hovered over it, but I couldn't bring myself to open it. What was the point? What more could she say? Her apology wouldn't change anything. But then another message came through. This one was from Max. I'm sorry about tonight. I wish things could be different. My stomach churned. I didn't want to know. I didn't want to see more of their messages, more of their lies. But somehow, I couldn't stop myself. I opened the message. We'll figure this out, Lily. I promise. Soon. I threw my phone on the passenger seat and slammed my fists into the steering wheel. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. How could I have been so blind? How long had this been going on behind my back? How much of our marriage had been a lie? The questions came one after another, each one more painful than the last. I sat there, waiting for something, anything, to give me a sign, something to tell me what to do next. But all I felt was the emptiness that had been growing inside me for months, the ache of realizing I had been living in a world of illusion. It was then that I realized there was nothing left to save. I didn't know what came next, but one thing was clear. This chapter of my life was over. I didn't know how long I stayed there, sitting in the dark by the lake, my mind spiraling. The only thing I could focus on was the dull ache in my chest, the gnawing feeling that everything I'd built with Lily, everything I had believed in, was gone. I had never been good at dealing with conflict. I never liked to confront problems, always hoping they'd resolve themselves. But now, there was no ignoring it. I couldn't run away from the reality of what had happened, what she had done. I couldn't pretend that everything was okay anymore. The quiet hum of the city in the distance only made everything feel more surreal. Everything felt so distant. My life was happening somewhere else now. Eventually, I couldn't sit there anymore. I needed to move. I needed to do something, anything, that would stop my mind from racing in circles. So, I got back in the car and drove, not really sure where I was going, just needing to be away from the house, away from Lily. I ended up at a bar, the kind I used to go to when I wanted to be alone but still be surrounded by people. The dim lighting and the noise of glasses clinking against the bar did nothing to soothe me, but it gave me a chance to breathe without feeling completely suffocated by the weight of everything. I ordered a drink, my hands still shaky. As I took the first sip, I felt the burn of the alcohol hit my throat, but it didn't numb the pain. Nothing could numb it. I wasn't sure how long I sat there, but eventually, someone slid onto the bar stool next to me. It was a woman, probably in her late 20s, with dark hair and a smile that seemed a little too bright for the place. She caught my eye as she ordered a drink, and for a second, I almost forgot where I was. I didn't want to talk to anyone, but she didn't seem to care. You look like you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders, she said, her voice soft but perceptive. I glanced over at her, trying to gauge if she was just being polite or if she actually cared. It's nothing, I muttered. Just life. She smiled knowingly, taking a sip of her drink. Yeah, life can hit pretty hard sometimes. There was a pause, and then she turned to face me. You know, if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm a good listener. I stared at her for a moment, considering her offer. Part of me wanted to just spill everything. The anger, the confusion, the sense of betrayal, but I didn't. I wasn't ready. Instead, I just nodded and offered a small, tight-lipped smile. Thanks, but I think I've got it. She didn't push. Instead, she just leaned back in her seat, giving me space. For the first time in hours, I didn't feel completely alone. I wasn't ready to deal with Lily yet. I wasn't ready to go back and face her, not when the betrayal felt so fresh, so raw. But I couldn't avoid it forever. Eventually, I paid for the drink and walked out of the bar, the night air biting at my skin. I needed to get my head straight. I needed clarity. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but I was trying to get past it. I got back in the car and drove toward home, but the closer I got, the more uncertain I felt. What was I going to do when I walked through that door? How was I going to look at her again? I had no answers. But I knew that whatever happened next, it would change everything. I stood in front of the door, my hand frozen on the handle. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. The last few days had been a blur of emotions, confusion, and anger. I'd been so sure I was done, that everything was broken beyond repair. But as I stood there, the silence of the house settling around me, something shifted inside me. I couldn't just walk away. Not like this. I had to talk to her. I had to understand. I wasn't ready to give up on everything. Not yet. When I opened the door, Lily was sitting in the living room, her eyes red from crying, her face etched with regret. She looked up at me, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw her vulnerability. The wall she had put up had come down. Sam, she whispered, standing up quickly as if she had been waiting for me. Her voice trembled. I'm so sorry. I never meant for things to get this far. I didn't want to hurt you. The weight of her words hit me harder than I expected. For all the anger I had felt, for all the betrayal, seeing her like this, it stopped me cold. She wasn't the woman I had been angry at for days. She was just human. I took a deep breath and stepped inside, shutting the door softly behind me. Tell me everything, Lily, I said quietly, my voice more steady than I felt. Tell me what happened. For the next few hours, she explained. How she had felt disconnected, how she had started to pull away without realizing it, and how, when she met Max, it seemed like the attention she craved. It wasn't an excuse for what happened. She admitted that freely, but it was the truth. I don't know what came over me, she said through her tears. I thought I could fix it by running away, but I was just making it worse. I made a huge mistake. It wasn't easy to hear. It wasn't easy to forgive. But in that moment, I realized something. We weren't perfect. We'd never been perfect. We both made mistakes. I'm not asking for forgiveness right now, she said, her voice breaking. I just need you to know how sorry I am, and how much I want to fix this, if you're willing to try. I looked at her for a long time, feeling the weight of everything we had shared, the years together, and everything that had gone wrong. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew that if we were going to make it work, it had to be together. I couldn't walk away without at least trying. I don't know what's going to happen, Lily, I said honestly, my voice softer now. But I'm willing to try too. I don't want to give up on us. The relief in her eyes was immediate. We didn't have all the answers. We still had a lot to work through. But for the first time in days, I felt like there was hope again. The next few months weren't easy. There were many conversations, hard ones, but we slowly started rebuilding. Trust takes time, and it wasn't something that could be fixed overnight. But we were committed to it, together. And somehow, little by little, we found our way back to each other. The journey wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and that's what mattered. In the end, I realized that love isn't about perfection. It's about how you pick yourself up, how you choose to move forward, and how you rebuild what's broken, even when it feels impossible. We weren't the same people we had been before, but maybe that was the point. We were better now, stronger, together. The road ahead wasn't clear, but for the first time, I felt like we could face it. And that, in the end, was enough.